The thing that's
Okay.
really, really worrying me at the moment is the world's leading scientist. I think he's got something like 14 professorships. The world leading expert in microwave irradiation, uh, Professor John Goldsmith, he was employed by the United States government and the World Health Organization and a few other top health organizations to look in to the effect of microwaves on the general population. One of his investigations that was published, and this stems from the Cold War, showed that at levels of microwaves lower than you would find in a school classroom would cause 47.7% stillbirth or miscarriage in the first 7 weeks of pregnancy in women. And this is all written in my report, the whole report. Now, subsequently, other universities doing their peer-reviewed research, published and peer-reviewed in scientific journals, they found that children, because of their electrical conductivity and the excess water in their bodies that adults don't have, they absorb more microwaves. And you can get an extra 20% more damage in children than adults. So we're looking at a minimum of 57.7% miscarriage, stillbirth, or genetically damaged children from the irradiation of the ovarian eggs in school children sitting in front of Wi-Fi for 25 hours a week. This alarmed me, and I started looking into this. And last April, I had a phone call from the Irish Doctors Environmental Association. And they said, would you address our annual conference in Dublin? And we want one specific thing that we want you to talk about. And only that. They said, don't go into anything else, don't go into Tetra, don't go into the effect on the planet, nothing at all, just this. And I said, okay, what is it? And they said, we want you to talk about the effect of low-level microwave irradiation on the ovarian follicles of schoolgirls. And I said, fine, I can do that. I prepared my talk. I gave it on early Saturday afternoon in Dublin to the Irish doctors. They asked questions during the afternoon. They block booked a restaurant, and I was faced questions on this Saturday evening. They asked me to come back on the Sunday, and I had further questions just to do with this from the doctors. I had further questions from 11 o'clock Sunday morning to 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, when I had to leave to come back to get my plane. So I was questioned all Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday. I say this because with all the different disciplines, the research which I had stood its ground.
Right.
Within a week, I was asked to give a lecture at Brighton University to the professors, doctors, students, Brighton University. I decided to run the same lecture because I wanted another opinion. So I gave it to Brighton University, and I was heavily questioned there. And in fact, one of the doctors said, this actually complements my research. He said because in other mammalian species that don't have a 20-year generation gap that we have, he said in other mammalian species we're finding an over 60% miscarriage, stillbirth, genetically damaged problem in smaller mammalian species, you know, that reproduce every few years. I mean, it takes us 20 years for a generation, but with smaller generation gaps, he found it was over 60%, which falls right into my 57. And then following that, I was asked to talk to academics at a place called Tring, North London. There were some there from North London universities, some schools and other people, and I ran the same lecture again. And on all three occasions, in Tring, Brighton and the Irish Doctors, they said, we must have this as a research report, and we want it referenced to the point where it is bomb-proof. And I said, okay. So when did I finish? April, May. I sat down in May to write the research report, which I sent you a copy. And it was published 1st of September here. But in it, I've shown that the government knew this before they put Wi-Fi into schools. They knew it was going to cause the birth defects which is going to cause in about 25 years' time. They knew that. They knew the power or the strength of the wave in the classroom was too high for school children. They knew that school children absorb more radiation than adults. So everything is known about this. So the government are deliberately causing harm to our children for no other reason than for somebody to make a lot of money and be in a position of power. No other reason. I sent a copy of my paper. I'll go back just one stage. I tried to contact my MP because I wanted to get this to the government and say, do you know the damage you're going to cause us in 25 to 35 years' time? It is going to put thalidomide into the shade. It's going to be much, much worse than thalidomide, much worse. My MP refuses to see me, Mel Stride. I spoke to his secretary, Dominic, and he hung up the phone on me. I wrote to the Parliamentary Ombudsman Service, and I have got a letter back here just today, and they said we cannot accept complaints concerning Parliament unless they come from your MP. And of course my MP won't see me. I wrote to the Prime Minister, number 10, and I've had a letter back saying that, and it's a very funny worded letter, the Prime Minister will be pleased for your request to see him concerning your report. I suspect the Prime Minister is being lied to. In my own gut feeling, I really believe the Prime Minister is being lied to. There are people in Parliament who are misleading the Prime Minister. And one of the questions I want to ask the Prime Minister, if I get to see him, if they honour their letter, one of the questions is, he is putting forward a very, very strong argument for us bombing Syria because they are using an illegal weapon on their children, namely gas. but it's an illegal weapon nevertheless. We are using a same stealth weapon on our children in this country. We are going to dwarf the casualties in Syria, dwarf them. A half of our children are going to be sick. The future of our children is going to be sick. In fact, over a half. And one of the things I want to say to the Prime Minister, if I get that far, is why shouldn't a superpower that has taken Wi-Fi out of its schools to protect the children, why shouldn't a superpower aim its missiles at England, use exactly the same words as the Prime Minister, saying, we are going to bomb your country because you are using a stealth weapon on children? There is absolutely no difference in that argument.
Right. Barrie, I know the passion in that argument, and I'm going to say I agree with it. But just to ask a testing question.
Go on,
You've used the word deliberate.
It is deliberate.
Right, they have done it deliberately. They've put the microwaves into school. How can you be sure it's deliberate and not incompetence in the government system?
Our scientists work with American scientists, and we have been developing stealth microwave weapons for, to my knowledge, the best part of 60 years. They've even been used by us and the Americans, and it's been documented. We used them on the Catholics in Northern Ireland. They were used on the women at Greenham Common. And I know that we have been developing them because I've been talking to people who've been developing them. It is an incredibly what's the word I'm looking for? Successful and brilliant stealth weapon because it's undetectable. And in this report, in my report, which is free, I don't make any money, I work totally for free. I don't make it in my report, and anyone here can get a copy. I'll give you the title, and it's on the internet. If people think the government will not experiment or kill its own people for profit, I've listed probably a dozen experiments there where our scientists have experimented on our population for no other reason than their own personal interest or gain or whatever it is that they want to get from it. And to give you an example, in the 60s, when I was in the Navy, a report came around where they wanted 20,000 volunteers for flu injections. It was nothing to do with flu. It was the Ministry of Defence and Porton Down experimenting on all sorts of biological concoctions to see how they would affect young fit men. Military people and the police, hence Tetra, are brilliant for epidemiological studies because their health is monitored. You have their work timetable, their sleep programs, their food. They're brilliant. And they were prepared and did kill the best part of 20,000 loyal, innocent service personnel. And some of them, when you read the reports, they died the most miserable, painful death, almost like they had bubonic plague with boils and pain. And the few survivors, we have a process, you may be familiar with the term, it's called active denial. We have a process whereby English scientists and English, and I'm using the word English here because I can't attribute it to any of the other countries, English scientists and English civil servants, we have a very small group and they are above and outside the law of this land. They can decide to carry out an experiment on people. They can cause the death of these people, and they have done, and this is only one of 7 cases I've known in my lifetime to come up. And to date, not a single government scientist or single civil servant causing this has stood in the dock. And the reason is they have a program called active denial, whereby they take 50 years for this to come to court. And there is one in court now. And after 50 years, they use the same 3 excuses. The first thing they say is, everybody is dead, there really is nobody to charge. If that doesn't work, they say memories are impaired, therefore the evidence is not genuine. And if that fails, and it's just been thrown out in a case where we experimented on the genitals of the gentleman in the Congo 50 years ago, if the second one is thrown out, they come in and say, Official Secrets Act. None of our people will appear in the dock. And what this means is that there is a subgroup. There is a subgroup in this country of scientists and civil servants who are absolutely bomb-proof and outside the law. They have more protection than the Queen. They cannot be taken to court. And this is wrong. We shouldn't have people in this country who cannot be taken to court. And a good example now is Tetra. There are people dying from the frequency of Tetra now. Quite a lot of them.
And of course you've produced another report recently on Tetra, which has been designed for the Public and Commercial Services Union.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've got this, and I forgot your original question, and I apologise, but it was to do with, this is the problem. We have people in our government and our, well, I suppose they're all governments, we have them, and they answer to nobody. They answer to nobody because they have this active denial delay process whereby they can cause death. And the same was with the 20,000 servicemen. And I remember the document coming round because I volunteered for it.
Well, I can reinforce what you're talking about here because in the time that I was serving, the DCI's Defence Council instruction documents would come round regularly advertising for volunteers for these experiments at Portondown, and I've read about flu experiments, and of course they were enticing military personnel to do these experiments by very large pay cash bonuses.
You got a cash bonus, you got a weekend in London, and I went to my officer and I said, look at this, sir, you know, a weekend in London. And he looked at me and he went, and he said, grow up, boy, grow up, and sent me away.
Well, I can say that one gentleman said to me when I asked a question about it, he said, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole because they're playing with some dangerous stuff. And I remember those words very clearly, which would have been back in the early 70s.
But we have, and I know, and we're coming back to your original question, I know the government scientists also know the danger we are going to cause our school children. I know that they know.
Right, so can I we'll just stick on this because I think this is very, very important.
Okay.
Well, you've told us that there's active denial, how they set up to deny it when some things go wrong. But and we're talking about groups of scientists and civil servants who are effectively a law to themselves in the establishment. Bringing Wi-Fi into schools, acknowledging the dangers that you say have been flagged up by the World Health Organization and yourself and other people. we're talking about ministers being given information. Does a person like Mr. Gove at the moment, does he actually know this information?
Yeah, it goes higher than that. A lady bishop secured me a visit to see Nick Gibb, who was then the Minister for Schools. A doctor came with us because she was alarmed at the effect Wi-Fi was going to have on her schoolgirl, her daughter. So I was there with a reverend lady and a doctor, and it may have even been another doctor. I think there were two doctors. And I put the proof in front of Nick Gibb. I put it in front of him on the desk. I said, we are going to cause 57.7% birth defects in the children being born from these school children. And I put it in front of him. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, I won't read it. Now, that's it.
What was your response to that?
Well, there is no response to that. He said, I won't read it. And then the reverend lady said, well, can we write you a letter at the end of this? I'll send you a letter. And he said, yes. And she wrote him a letter. I got a copy of the reply, and I've got it here. I got a copy of the reply, and in his reply he said, there is no conclusive evidence that microwaves cause harm. And that is a lie. It is a direct lie.
Could we assume that in the meantime, from the time that you actually went to see him in person to the time he produced that reply, he had gone and taken advice from somebody within the government scientific world?
Whoever is advising the ministers, they're probably saying, there are activists all over the country, they're saying this, they're saying that. Our scientists say there is no conclusive evidence, and in fact I've had a letter today because in Plymouth they want to Wi-Fi the whole city as one big block Wi-Fi. I sent a copy of this paper to the area medical officer, the professor. I know he didn't read it because of the letter that I got back was quoting something that was in there and he hadn't read it. And he said there is no conclusive evidence. He said there is no conclusive evidence, you can look at it, it's on my desk there, no conclusive evidence that microwaves are dangerous. There are, to my knowledge, 14 epidemiological studies proving microwaves cause cancer and other illnesses, birth defects. There are 8 High Court cases proving it. There are 19 other legal judgments, magistrates, mayors. The industry themselves, in their own study, their own epidemiological study, they said this can cause cancer. There is a wealth of documentation. So he has been told a lie by the person he asked in government. There is somebody, and we're back to these people, there is somebody at the top who wants the whole country microwaved, is prepared in 20, 30 years' time to cause the ill effects that we're getting, and they are lying to the ministers. And I know the ministers are being lied to because I have the text. This has been brought up in Parliament twice, to my knowledge, and each time a minister has stood up and lied. And I know it's the same lie, so I know they're being fed a lie.
Can I ask a question?
Of course. Yeah.
Why do you think it is, Barry, that whenever the policy seems to be, in the case of smoking and drinking and obesity, the policy seems to be for the precautionary principle that there's a possibility that this causes cancer, there's a possibility that you'll have a heart attack, therefore you may not smoke, you may not drink, you may not be obese.
Yeah.
Why is it that they take that policy for those things and yet they seem to take the other policy for mobile phones and Wi-Fi and Tetra?
There are two different reasons here. The first is just the phenomenal amount of money they're getting in every day. It is phenomenal. And if they run it for, let's say, another 10 years, and they get another however many £100 billion or whatever it is, it's probably worth it for the deaths that we're going to have. So you've got the money aspect. You've got the power that comes with the money. You have the military and the secret services, mainly the secret services. What people don't realise is that every single time they push a button on Wi-Fi, their cell phones, every single time, up to 40 countries are logging this. The Americans are storing it on their computer. They can tell exactly where you are, what you're saying, where you're going, and our MI5 and our MI6, this is a dream to them. Even if your phone is off, totally off, it can be activated these days to still listen to where you are. They can listen to the conversations. If it's got one of those camera things, they can see who you're talking to. It is a perfect spy device, and they can watch everybody in the country that has got one, everybody, and listen to them, know where they are. Now, this has obviously security benefits. It also has blackmailable opportunities. And there's one thing I know quite a lot about, and it's spies. The chief weapon for a spy, either in this country or in another country, the chief weapon is blackmail. Always is blackmail. For instance, Navy officer. If, not you, sir, any Navy officer, if you were doing something that you really shouldn't be doing, little boys, little girls, gambling, drugs, anything, doesn't matter what it is. If you carry a cell phone, even if it's off, I know where you are, what you're doing, what you're saying. I know everything about you. I can come to you and say, this is what we've got on you. And this is how they work. This is what we've got on you. Now, you have a choice. You can go to jail. We can bring total destruction to your family. Your children will have to leave university. Your wife will divorce you. You will lose your house. Everything will fall apart. Or you can stay in your job. And we want you to do just one thing, and one thing only, and then we will never bother you again. This is an application for a passport. You will say that you have known this person since they were 5 years old, whatever. They are a good upstanding citizen. They are a British citizen. You will sign their passport or their birth certificate. After you've thought about it for a few seconds, most people will sign. And they say, thank you very much, goodbye, Navy officer. That is a passport or a birth certificate or something that will get another foreign agent into the country with a British identity. And this is how they do it. And they, in the Cold War, they were doing it at one a day in the UK. One a day were coming in. They all had birth certificates, they all had passports, they all had job references. And it may be that when you leave the Navy and you get your own job, they will come back to you and say, you will employ this person.
Right. So your main point on this is that it's, aside from the money coming in from the technology, the microwave
Yep.
technology that allows all this to happen,
Mhm.
it's the power that you are actually giving the state.
Oh yeah.
So the state doesn't care about the bodies, because if they can listen
Yeah.
and snoop on each individual,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
worth the deaths
It's
that
worth
result.
the deaths. Yeah, I mean the benefits outweigh the risks. What they haven't realised, they haven't read their own papers. I don't think they realise that 57.7% of our children are going to have stillbirths or miscarriages or genetically damaged children. But that's 25 years down the line. If you think about it, prime ministers come and go sometimes every 4 years. Ministers can come and go in a couple of months. The people who are doing this are permanent. They have to be permanent. And they have to be incredibly well established, almost like an exclusive boys' club. They will be well established, they will all know each other, and all they have to do, because when prime ministers come and go, they need advice. The ministers need advice. And it is who these people go to for their advice, who they have a 50-year career in the civil service. They will be unbendable. And prime ministers, and the fact prime ministers come and go, it plays into their hands, because they're not there long enough to investigate them. You know, you come, you're incredibly busy for 4 years, you start a war or something, and you go. You don't have time to look into this. And so it's just probably an exclusive boys' club there.
Right. If we just come back onto the technical matters, microwaves get used for different purposes. So we might have straightforward telephone communications, or we could satellite communications, or we've increasingly got people that want to communicate on the move.
Yep.
Is there any difference in the risks for various microwave transmissions? Take a cell phone mast, for example, which a lot of people have been very unhappy that they're springing up all over the place. If you had to categorise the risks, is there a spread of the dangers of the type of microwave radiation, or the way it's the aerial type, or the way it's focused? Or do you say all microwave is dangerous?
Well, all microwaves are dangerous, but it's in fact an incredibly good question. All microwaves are dangerous, but there is, oddly enough, the less you receive, the more dangerous it is.
That's a very interesting answer.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit
Yep.
more?
Because you and I, we have defence systems in our body. We have it's called protein 53, which is a cellular process that defends us against radiation. We evolved with it when we were cave people against electric storms. We have something called a nuclear core complex in the body, which again protects us against radiation. We have antioxidants in the body that will protect us from harm caused by radiation. So if you have a big waft of microwaves coming in, your body knows it's in trouble, it recognises the radiation. You have special cells in the side of your eye, glial cells in the side of the eye, which also detect radiation and can affect other parts of the body. So we have a defence mechanism. Children don't have this. And if you have a low level of radiation, even for adults, it comes in below the level that activates the body's defence mechanism. So it's like coming in under the radar. So the microwaves at low level, they come in, they build up very, very, very slowly, but with, like all methods of absorption with radiation, with all parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, doses are accumulative. It's like sunbathing on a cloudy day. You can still get burned, it just takes longer. Doses are accumulative, so it's like a slow-growing cancer. So by the time you realise you've got it, the damage is done and it's too late. So low level is more dangerous than high, for a start, and this is Wi-Fi in a classroom. The next thing is there is an order, because you have to be a certain multiple of the wavelength to absorb more, which is resonance, as you will understand, sir, being a Navy officer. So the most at risk is in fact the embryo, because it can absorb more radiation because it resonates more from the wavelength. Then you have infants, and then you have sort of children, then pregnant women, the elderly, the sick people, and finally healthy fit young men. There is an order, and if you look at the epidemiological studies, and they're published, you will always see, and our government have published this, and so has the Americans, so has the World Health Organization. When you look at the lists, it is always the embryo, infants, children, pregnant women, other women, you know.
Right.
As the list always follows the same course.
So we're talking in general terms about a very scientific subject.
Yep.
Can you tell us about your qualifications to be talking on this subject? What is your experience and what are your qualifications?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that. I trained from 1960 microwaves in the Royal Navy, and I studied all aspects of microwave technology. Radar, it was used as later on booby traps, because I was a diver and all divers do bomb disposal. Booby traps in mines. I studied harmful effects, because if you in the Navy, you don't just look at radar screens, you service the equipment, you study the dangers of getting yourself exposed. So I did all microwaves. I have a degree from Exeter University in physics. I studied nuclear and atomic physics for my final years, and for my dissertation I looked at the absorption of electromagnetic waves, and I looked at the very end of the microwave absorption spectrum into the infrared. I wanted to see that when you got to the end of the microwave frequency, would you still absorb it? And that was my dissertation. I have another degree, an honours degree, from the Council for National Academic Awards, where I studied thinking processes and environmental influences on thinking processes. I have my teaching diploma from the Home Office in human physiology. I taught down here. I taught advanced physics in the sixth form, just down the road here at Ashburton, South Devon College. Is it South Dartmoor College? I taught advanced physics, both theoretical and practical, there. I was commissioned by the Police Federation to write the Tetra report, and the subsequent union to write the other report. In fact, I technically, no one's actually ever left me alone. I've been in microwaves now since I first took my 3 library books out in 1959 to get past my first Navy exam. So I've really been in it since 1959, talking to scientists and travelling the world, talking about this. Since 1959, I haven't really let up.
Okay. And you've already told us about those earlier seminars in Dublin when, of course, people were questioning you for many hours on the subjects and on your findings. So obviously, your responses were keeping those people fully engaged. Yeah.
I've been questioned all over the world by government scientists, governments, royalty, right around the world. And I've had one question, and it's in my paper. I've had one question when I go to countries, and I'm not showing off here, I am invariably on television, invariably on the radio, and sometimes I'm on the radio before I even get to the country. I'm off to America soon to do a lecture with a professor from Washington University, and I'm doing a radio broadcast in 2 weeks' time prior to me going. And I have one question in every country, and that is, I wish to be humiliated live on television with somebody from the government or the industry with their extent of their knowledge on microwave irradiation. And I have one question, and my question is, what is the safe level of microwave irradiation for the ovarian follicles in a school child? That's it. So you've got a child, Wi-Fi, sitting down 25 hours a week, zonk, straight through the ovarian follicles, which are going to be her children. What is the safe level? And to date, in 17 years, not a single person will face me live, on television, on radio, anywhere, and give me that level.
Isn't it interesting that if you look at what's happening with the academy schools, which of course both governments have been bringing in rapidly, if you look at the programs for those schools, increasingly they're talking about the need in the school environment to go for a Wi-Fi environment.
Oh, yeah.
And many of them are saying that instead of having a set classroom type education, that as long as each child has his or her own laptop, then the education process will be wherever the child is. So what's coming into my mind as you're talking is, of course, that means that you're not just going to have a child going into a classroom where there'll be a laptop, but that laptop is going to be with them, whatever it is, 12 hours a day, 18 hours a day.
And they'll take it home for homework.
Yes.
But there is absolute proof in this report, and it was the Irish doctors that asked me to write this, and they wanted it bomb-proof. There is absolute proof there that the government knows, because I've referenced them. I've referenced what the government have said. They know it's going to cause this.
And if I just bring you back a little bit, because I know that in your early days you were looking at microwave being used as a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just before we started the interview, you touched on the fact that an example which is relatively recent was the Soviet embassy, as it was bombarding the American embassy with microwaves.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that sort of use as microwaves as a weapon?
Well, this is where it really started. The Russians wanted to listen to what the Americans were talking about in the embassy in Moscow, and they couldn't put a listening device in because the Americans would detect it. They wanted a listening device that they could activate from a distance when the Americans were talking, and they presented the Americans with a big carving that went behind the desk of the ambassador. The carving had a device in it that when you beamed microwaves to the device, it absorbed the energy, worked like a capacitor, transmitted the speech, but as soon as they turned off the source of microwaves, it stopped working. So when the Americans came in and tested for transmissions, they got nothing. So it was deemed safe. And so for, I don't know, quite a few years, I mean years and years and years, they beamed the microwaves into the embassy to listen to this conversation. So the Americans, but then they found that the Americans were going down with the women, miscarriages, stillbirths, breast cancers. The ambassadors kept getting leukemia. They found all these illnesses. And in the end, the Americans twigged that the microwaves coming in were causing the illnesses. But instead of stopping it, they then allowed their own people to be microwaved, and not for the first time, so they could study it with the dose. Then, when it was realised what was going on, they produced a false report saying microwaves were harmless. They then produced a second report that said we're fractionally above the national average for cancers and miscarriages. And then the third report was when Goldsmith stepped in, and he was employed by the World Health Organization and the Americans and everybody to do the thorough report. And he's the one that said, of the microwaved women, 47.7% had miscarriage in the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. And the levels were lower there than you get in a classroom, lower.
Right.
But it's not just the microwaves. Then, and during my time, and answering your question, it was, they found they could put pulses in the microwaves, or modulations. And the modulations could interfere with the natural brain waves, called entrainment. And they found that when you entrained a brain for causing aggression or whatever, when you entrained a brain, the effect could last up to 6 weeks. And we're talking severe aggression, severe sexual aggression, total and absolute despondency, hopelessness, suicidal tendencies. And if you get the right frequency, you can cause cancer. You can cause heart failure. Now, I have a list, and I'll happily give you a copy. I have a list of, from what I gathered from spies, and I didn't deliberately keep it, I just suddenly realised I had it one day when I was asked to do Tetra, because Tetra is using a known weapons frequency, which is what I put in my report. I said, you can't use this, it's a known weapons frequency, and it causes, among other things, aggression, but it can cause you not to work properly in a moment of crises. It causes confusion and sort of hopelessness.
And you have pointed out incidents where police have acted in this unpredictable, aggressive way as a result of exposure to
Absolutely.
Tetra.
And I'll give you a copy if you want it. When an officer was charged with murder, I wrote to the High Court judge, I wrote to the government, they wouldn't have nothing to do with it, wouldn't have anything to do with it. I wrote to the High Court judge and I said, I'm being blocked by the government. And I'll give you a copy of the letter, and I've said, this is the frequency, this is what it is known to cause. The officer was exceeded the safe level of this pulse frequency. He was entrained. And this should be used in the officer's defence. And I sent the letter to the judge. I had a letter back from his solicitor saying, would you please send us the documents? I sent the documents and the proof to the solicitor. I had a letter back saying, thank you very much, we are passing this to council. And then the weirdest thing happened. He was found not guilty before I could be called to give evidence.
I've got two questions really to end up
Anything
on.
you like.
You are sitting on the evidence
Yep.
of the dangers of microwave, but you're also pointing to many other people, including Mr. Goldsmith.
Yep.
What would you like to see happen with that evidence? Where would you like to see it go? What effect would you like to see from the evidence?
I would like a judicial inquiry, is what I would really love in my list of wishes. I would love a judicial inquiry where people can be called, government scientists can be called, the civil servants, the advisors can be called, who are saying this is safe. I would like a judicial inquiry where if you go there and you lie, you are in contempt, myself included, and you go to jail. That is what we need. I would like to talk to somebody in government who has the power to break through this, what I call liars. I would like somebody in power to get hold of these liars and say, because they are manipulating government, without a shadow of a doubt. We have a stream of liars somewhere, and they go through governments. And they know exactly how to handle the governments, they know exactly what to tell the ministers, exactly how to defend themselves. It's under the Official Secrets Act, you can't tell them this, you can't tell them that. You have this upper government who control government. We want somebody who can penetrate those. And they need to be exposed because they are running the country, not the people we elect.
Right.
They are running the people who we ask to run the country. So I would like that. But I would like some sort of judicial hearing is what I really want. I mean, I would like to see the Prime Minister for more than 10 minutes before somebody rushes in and say, urgent phone call, Prime Minister, and he says, thank you very much, goodbye. I would like to talk to the Prime Minister like I can talk to you for an hour. And I can say, you are being lied to, here is the proof, I've got it. You are being lied to, this is your watch, and where Blair is going to be known for nothing else, whatever good he did, he's going to be known for nothing else but weapons of mass destruction. Here, he's going to be known for passing out Wi-Fi and causing, according to his people, 57.7% of miscarriages, birth defects, stuff like that. That is what he's going to be known for.
Right. Okay, my last question is, knowing the risks that you've been outlining now, how can we protect ourselves as adults, and in particular, how can we protect our children?
You can't. As long as these people are saying, the letter I've got here now from the professor, medical officer of Plymouth, I sent him all the evidence. He hasn't read it. I know he hasn't read it by his reply. He asked the government say there is no convincing evidence. They are lying. He is believing the government. So until we can stop people lying to medical officers in charge of cities, because he won't take my word above the government. And you can look at his letter, you can photograph it. Until we can stop the people in government lying to ministers, area health officers, area medical officers, the Prime Minister, the people who are continually asked, until we can stop the people lying to them, you can do nothing. Because if you go to your MP, he will go to somebody who will be a minister, the minister will have been lied to, he tells the MP, you get it back, the government scientists say it's safe. I'm not going to name names, and if you think I'm lying, then you must just not believe me. But I have represented several millionaires, parents worried about their children, even 2, if not 3, billionaires. And one billionaire said to me, I am going to take this to court. Brilliant. I have the evidence. I can get scientists from around the world. We will smash this ring now. Went out, legal letter to the industry. The reply, and this isn't the only reply that has been like this, take us to court. Please do. Our part of the trial will be 3 years by the time we've called all of our witnesses. Court is £100,000 a day. 3 years. Then there's your part of the trial.
So you've covered a lot of ground with this. We've been taken through the risks. I know that there's a lot more information in your head, not only on this subject, but also this business about how higher power levels in the government control people, control senior ministers, senior civil servants. And we know these people are dangerous because you are telling us, and we know from other examples, that they're prepared to lie and put people's lives in danger. We hope very much that we can come back and have a talk with you about that side of the subject, and also bring out a little bit of your other experience in some of these more mysterious areas of working for the ministry, as we'll say. So we look forward to coming back, and we'll be very interested to see what the effect of our interview this afternoon is going to be on our viewers and listeners. And of course, you've given us a very, very interesting local aspect by pointing out that Plymouth is attempting to become a complete Wi-Fi city, even though you've made the risks known to the local health officer. So we'll stay on the case. Thank you very much.